Hello everyone, Neil Tappin here from Golf Monthly and welcome to the third video in our series looking at some of the equipment trends that you'll find out on the European Tour. If you haven't seen them already, check out our first two videos. We looked at wedge trends and we also looked at some of the oldest golf clubs we could find. And in this video we are going to focus on the other end of the bag. Specifically, we are looking at the makeup of hybrids, utility irons and long irons that players are currently carrying. I think when it comes to hybrids and long irons, it's fairly self-explanatory, but it is worth explaining what we mean by utility irons. And the one I have in my hands here is a good example. So this is the Mizuno MP18 MMC Fly High, bit of a mouthful, but this is part of a sort of new generation of utility iron, stroke driving iron, stroke slightly more forgiving long iron at the top end of the bag that are becoming very, very popular. Now, most of them have a sort of hollow construction, which enables the manufacturers to build in a lot more forgiveness and ball speed into a club head that still looks really traditional down behind the ball. It's obviously a makeup that was going to do really well out on tour, and that's certainly what we've seen from the data. Now, in terms of the data, again, we've received that from Sports Marketing Surveys Inc., and they are the guys that go up to each of the players on the putting green or the driving range before they tee off on the Thursday of a European Tour event, and they find out what every single player in the field is using. And for this video, the data that we've got dates back to the French Open earlier on this year at the Golf National in Paris. There were 156 players in the field, and obviously it's a Rolex Series event. It's one of the highest profile events on the European Tour. It was also the host venue for the Ryder Cup, so it has a fantastic field, a high caliber field. And what we're looking at here in particular in the first part of this video is the split between how many players were using hybrids, how many were using long irons, and how many were using utility irons. So a quick look at the data reveals that there were 48 hybrids in play at the French Open between 41 players, so some players were using two. There were 105 utility irons between 84 players, and there were 69 2 and 3 long irons in the bag. So regular standard set of irons, 2 and 3 long irons in the bag. Now, the single most popular club that we found in this particular area of the bag was a 17-degree utility iron. That would be the equivalent of a 2 iron, I guess you'd say. There were 28 players using one of those. And that goes to show just how much variation there was at the top end of the bag between the players out on tour. If you thought that the wedge video was interesting to see how many players had their wedges set up differently from each other, even more so is that the case at the top end of the bag. And what's interesting when you look at the data here is to see how the usage of hybrids has fallen away since 2012. So in 2012 at the French Open at Paris National, there were 154 hybrids in play. Again, there were 156 players in the field. Now, I'm sure quite a lot of players were carrying two hybrids, but it goes to show the vast majority of players in 2012 were using a hybrid. The same is not true today. There has been a big shift from using hybrids towards using these types of utility irons in 2018. And I think there's a few different reasons for that. These utility irons, they do feel good. Obviously, that's going to appeal to the tour players, and they also look fairly traditional. So you are adding a little bit of sort of muscle to a head that looks traditional, and it's definitely going to suit the eye of the better player, and that's certainly what we're seeing in the data here. A few other things to point out from the data. 8 players did not carry either a hybrid, a utility iron, or a 2 or a 3 iron. So all of those 8 players, they all carried a fairway wood, and it's interesting to see that some of the best players in the field chose this option for their lineup. So Tommy Fleetwood, Justin Thomas, Andy Sullivan all had effectively a 5 wood in the bag, and then went from 5 wood to 4 iron. Now, it's something you'll see consistently through this video. If you want to have 4 wedges in your bag, you are going to need to leave a gap at the other end of the bag. There's just no other way of doing it. There are different ways, approaches that players have taken to that gap, but effectively it's going to exist somewhere in the bag. If you have 4 wedges at the bottom end of the bag, those 3 players that I listed there all have a fairway wood, and then their longest iron they have is a 4 iron. That's the gap that they have, and that's a sort of system that they have. It's a problem they have to manage within their own games. Interestingly, Tommy Fleetwood is still carrying, or was at the French Open, was still carrying a 19-degree Nike Vapor Fly fairway wood. So the next thing I wanted to do was look at some of the most unique, interesting, setups at the top end of the bag and go into them in a little bit more detail, starting with Lucas Bjerregaard. So he has a fairway wood, he has a TaylorMade M3 15 degree fairway wood. I guess that would be about the equivalent of a 4 wood. Then he goes into a utility iron, which is the Titleist TMB. He has that in a 2 iron, so that's 17 degrees or thereabouts. He then has a 3 iron, which is the Titleist 718 MB, but he doesn't carry a 4 iron. So he has a 5 iron in that set of Titleist 718 MBs, he has a 3 iron, and he has a 2 iron in the TMB, but he carries no 4 iron. He leaves that in the car or he leaves that at home. It's an interesting take on what you might do at the top end of the bag. Again, you need to make compromises if you want 4 wedges, and that's exactly what Bjerregaard has at the bottom end of this bag. The next player to look at is Paul Dunn. So Paul Dunn, again, he has a Titleist fairway wood. He has that set to 15 degrees, so again, sort of forward-ish in terms of its loft. And then he has 3 utility irons. All of them are Titleist TMB utility irons. He has a 2, a 3, and a 4. Which means obviously he can't carry a 3 and a 4 iron in his normal set of irons, which is Titleist 718 CB. So they start from 5 iron down. So he effectively is taking the long irons out of that 718 CB set and replacing it with the TMB. And it goes to show that clearly those performance benefits of a little bit more distance and a little bit more speed that are on offer from a slightly different construction in terms of the head, they make a difference. They make a difference obviously to players, amateur players who strike the ball from all over the face, but also to some of the best players in the world who are very consistent. They rely on that extra bit of forgiveness, that extra bit of speed at the top end of the bag that you can find from other models, and it's interesting to see it playing out here. The next player to look at is Matteo Manassero, and that's because the data reveals that Manassero carries 2 clubs of exactly the same loft. So he carries a hybrid, a Callaway Rogue hybrid set to 21 degrees, and he carries a Callaway Apex utility iron also set to 21 degrees. Now we don't know exactly how he has those set up. My prediction would be that one of them is slightly strong or slightly weak, and there will be a difference in terms of loft there, in terms of the way they actually play. Now, interestingly, he has a utility iron and a hybrid, and that offers you more options. If you're somebody that prefers to hit hybrids from the rough, for instance, to approach greens from the rough, or perhaps you want to approach par 5s with a hybrid that's going to come in a little bit softer, then that's definitely an option for you. And if you need a utility iron as a second option off the tee, then perhaps this is a really good way of setting up your golf club. It goes to show there are many different options available for players, and everyone is different. The next player to look at is Richie Ramsey. Again, he carries a fairway wood, a Callaway Rogue 3+ wood. That's a slightly strong 3 wood. And then he has a hybrid Callaway Epic 20 degree, and then he carries 2 Callaway X forged utility irons set to 24 degrees and 27 degrees. Now that 27 degree utility iron was the most lofted utility iron we found from any of the players in the field, and obviously it's quite a cluttered top of the bag for Richie Ramsey, so the compromise for him is that he doesn't carry a 3, a 4 or a 5 iron from his regular set of Callaway Apex irons. So effectively his set of irons starts from 6 iron and works down from there. So the next player to look at is Brandon Stone. I'm going to list out what he has. So he has a Ping G 14.5 degree fairway wood. Then he has a Ping Prototype 2 iron. He has another Ping Prototype 2 iron, and then he has a Ping I210 3 iron. Now my bet would be that one of those 2 irons has been bent to a 1 iron loft. So effectively, I'm just guessing, but this is my best guess. He goes from 3 wood to 1 iron, 2 iron, 3 iron. Again, he only has 3 wedges at the bottom end of the bag because he has such a cluttered lineup at the top end of the bag. Clearly it works for him. He very nearly shot 59 at the Scottish Open. The final player we are going to look at is the winner of the tournament. This is Alex Noren. He obviously won the French Open. He also went and performed really well at the Golf National in the Ryder Cup. So it's a golf course he knows well. He was carrying a Callaway Rogue 3+ wood, same as Richie Ramsey. So that strong 3 wood that Ramsey was carrying, Noren has that as well. He was also carrying a hybrid, a Callaway Apex 18 degree hybrid. No 3 iron, his set of Callaway Apex Pro long iron starts at 4, so the gap in his set would be from the 4 iron in the Callaway Apex Pro up to the 18 degree hybrid. He does that because he has 4 wedges at the bottom end of the bag. He has a 46, a 50, a 56 and a 60, all Callaway Mac Daddy 4 wedges. Guys, plenty of detail there for you, loads to absorb and plenty to think about. When it comes to setting up your golf clubs, there are so many different factors that you need to bear in mind. You need to think about where you're strongest, where you're weakest, the golf courses that you most regularly play on. You need to think about the different options you want and where you want those options. You can't have 15 clubs, so there needs to be a compromise. As I say, we are seeing a switch away from hybrids amongst the sort of upper echelons, the elite players, but that doesn't mean to say that's a good option for amateur golfers. Hybrids are still a great option for the majority of club golfers, but there are so many different options out there, and if you are a player who hasn't used a utility iron in the past, hasn't tested one out, I would urge you to do so because there are so many great options. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Please do leave comments below. Let us know what you think. Let us know your club lineup at the top end of the bag. We're really interested to hear your thoughts. But for now, from West Hill, it's goodbye.